Eckholm, and it is my joy and pleasure to welcome you all here this morning. Welcome to everyone here in the sanctuary. Welcome to everybody joining us on Zoom and Facebook and whenever you join us. We're thrilled that you're here with us this morning. You know, it's so hard to know every morning, is it sunny? Is it cloudy? Is that good? Is that bad? I am welcoming this cloudy weather this morning, knowing that there will be sunny weather anytime, because that's the nature of living here in San Diego, isn't it? And for those of you like me, who are originally from the East Coast, you may have experienced this. Your family say, "Don't you talk about the weather. Your weather is much too good to ever complain about the weather." So welcome to our service this morning. We're really glad to have you here. And we are going to get started this morning with our congregational songs.
Yes.
I just want to invite, first, before we go any farther, please welcome TJ Moss, our musician this morning. And our wonderful Sylvia, who's our practitioner this morning.
And our wonderful everything, the queen of everything, Victoria! Queen Victoria. She's going to help us. You're going to help guide us on this song. All right.
Sure.
We're going to sing our congregational song, and the lyrics are right popping up. A light in this world.
They are on.
Right there.
Oops, no.
Okay.
Well, they were, but now they're not.
You
So-
know the words, y'all. You know the words.
There we go.
Okay.
All right. So, TJ, here we go. 6-8.
I am a light, I am a light, I am a light in this world. I am a light, I am a light, I am a light in this world. And I shine, and I shine, and I shine so bright. And I shine, and I shine, and I shine so bright. You are a light, you are a light, you are a light in this world. You are a light, you are a light, you are a light in this world. And you shine, and you shine, and you shine, and you shine so bright. And you shine, and you shine, and you shine so bright. We are a light, we are a light, we are a light in this world. We are a light, we are a light, we are a light in this world. And we shine, and we shine, and we shine so bright. And we shine, and we shine, and we shine so bright. Gentle, shine, we shine, we shine, we shine, we shine, we shine, we shine so bright.
Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all.
when we get caught in anxiety about future possibilities, we can brave the darkness by welcoming everything and pushing away nothing. During our silent meditation, I invite you to contemplate this thought. I embrace hope as a transformative force in my life and community. Embracing the allness of everything is simple to do, simple to be, very easy to allow to continue flowing forever. This is because God is all there is. Divine Spirit, the holy vibration of the universe, your mind, your voice, your ethereal body invites and joins with the divine always. In so doing, one can embrace hope as a transformative force for good, forever for good. And so I give thanks for this beautiful day that's unfolding exactly as you wish it, as you want it, as you desire. There is joy, unity. There is an absolute beautiful connection, whether you speak to one another or not, because our souls, our ethereal minds are always and already connected. This spreads across the world and into the universe, of course. And so I say that I give thanks for all that we have, all that we can use here today, right now, in this moment, the beauty of connection. Connection to those who are listening online. Thank God for the electronic genius, the technology, the desire to be present, to receive the words and the wisdom of our awesome Reverend Natasha, to be here connecting and laughing together and taking everything in today so that the day continues to unfold perfectly for you and you and you and so on. Let there be love, let there be light, let there be good today. It is a good God day. Thank you for the musicians who come here, and especially today, we have such a special one. Thank you for the vibrations in this sanctuary. Thank you, God, for everything. So knowing this, it is so easy to say, we are already transforming within ourselves to more joy and more good. And so I call this day good and very good. And we say together, and so it is. Let there be music. TJ Moss.
How do I follow that up, y'all? So I was thinking about anything is possible, and I was thinking the song leapt into my aura today, and this is a song that I was kind of in a dark place. I think a lot of us were at the time. You can use your imagination, and I was contemplating a black hole, and I figured if there's something that eats light, then that pretty much anything is possible at this point. That's about the craziest thing I I could think of. And so this song kind of just jumped off from there. But on a deeper level, the fact that something can eat light and there's a darkness that's so powerful that can pull the light in is just something that is on a deeper level is very to be conscious of that. We are the light and we have to keep shining because the darkness is out there and it's trying to eat us. So there's your nightmare fuel for the day. There's a hole in the universe where the light disappears. You can look but never see it. You can choose to not believe it, but the truth is that the truth is yours alone. There's a hole in the universe where the dark doesn't fear, where the headline's trying to lead you, but there's still time to see that the truth is what we fear when we're alone. The wait is almost over, but the time is never slower than the night before the morning of. And the light will come before you know. So hang on, let go. The night is almost over, and the light will come before you know. The wait is almost over, but the time is never slower than the light before the morning of. And the light will come before you know. So hang on, let go. The night is almost over, and the light will come before you know. The night is almost over, and the light will come before you know. The wait is almost over, but the time is never slower than the night before the morning of. And the light will come before you know. Hang on, let go. The night is almost over, and the light will come before you know.
Thank you, TJ. That was a very provocative song. I have to digest it a little further. And I want to make one mention, and with great respect for your creativity and your insights. And I guess what I would like to offer is the idea that sometimes what we perceive as light and dark are our perceptions. I have a photograph on my phone. I actually keep it there to remind me when I forget. It's a photograph of the full moon, because the moon is always full. we don't see it as always full, right? We see the moon go through a cycle, right, from very dark to very bright, because that's the function of how the moon orbits the planet. But the moon is always full, which means that it's always light. What I appreciated in the lyric of your song, TJ, was this idea that, you know, when we are sort of stuck in that perception of the dark, to remind us that that light is coming, right? Right? Sort of that long night of the soul sometimes that everybody experiences. And another tool is to remember that that light is actually always present, number one. But the other is that light and dark are both part of the whole, right? We can't have light without dark. And sometimes we struggle with that, right? We want it to be Christmas every day. We want it to be light all the time because light is great. And yet it is part of our humanness, and it seems, right, to need to experience the wholeness of life, which has both light and dark. So I just offer that as a thought. Okay. So this month, September, has been a month of talking about transcendent purpose. I love these themes we have sometimes. They have these great big words, and I read them and I go, what the heck does that mean? And I know all month we've been talking about this idea of purpose and how we identify and engage our purpose and what we focus our purpose on. And we live in a society that is very focused on purpose in a particular way, right? Which is mostly material, right? Our purpose is to have a good job, have a nice house, have some money, take vacations, do fun things. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with any of that. But is that really our purpose as human beings? So this is something that we're thinking about this month. And the topic for today was called Anything is Possible, which is a topic I really appreciate because perhaps like you, has anybody here ever thought, oh, that's never going to happen. That's not possible. I'll raise my hand. And I am really grateful for the fact that there are people who periodically remind me, why is that? If it's not going to happen? And I have to look at what my assumptions and my fears and my worries are. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So transcendent purpose is this idea of two things. One is of going beyond your perceived limits. And I think that's another dimension of the kind of society we live in. We live in a society that likes to tell us what our limits are, right? As individuals, as groups, as families, right? This is as far as you can go. This is as far as you can go with where you came from, with who your family is, with what your economic situation might be. You know, don't hope for too much, right? Or you'll be disappointed. Right? And that lives in this very uneasy balance with this very American idea of sky's the limit, right? Anybody can do anything that they want. And then when that doesn't happen, like, what's wrong with me if I can't do or accomplish all of that, right? So we're faced with this idea on one hand of like, how do we go beyond these limits, right? And also, how do we navigate this experience that feels so complicated and hard sometimes with intention and awareness, because they're not the kind of conversations we usually have. For example, I would say that I don't think there was ever a point in my childhood or youth that I came home and asked my parents, why is this so hard? And where they would have felt comfortable explaining it to me, because I don't think they really knew either. And we don't have those conversations very easily, either with ourselves or with others, because we don't really learn how to do that. But we're kind of thinking about it in our head a lot of the time, aren't we? But we are proposing here, as part of our teaching, right, that living with transcendent purpose means choosing to live in a way to bring forth new realities for ourselves as individuals and for us collectively, right? We have this wonderful vision, the global heart vision, that is part of Centers for Spiritual Living. And so we are engaged in this project, right? To not only create our greatest life, right, individually, that's one of our OM mottos, right? Create your greatest life. But also, how do we support each other in creating our greatest life as a community? And boy, does it feel like we need that right now, doesn't it? Right? Because there's a lot of struggle and difficulty and pain going on right now. So today we're going to talk a little bit about hope and some of the different dimensions of hope and how we can use hope as one of the tools or means by which we can create a greater life for ourselves, a more purpose-filled life as individuals and together. So Ernest Holmes tells us this. He says, "We exist for the purpose of self-expression. The infinite has already implanted within us an instinctive intuition, which is the spiritual knowledge of good. Our whole growth results from an inner awakening." Okay, I want to repeat that last line again. Our whole growth results from an inner awakening. To me, what that reminds me of is that it's not about what's out there. It's about what's in here. And I will certainly share that I did not even begin to think about this idea of what is in here as something that's important until well into my adult life, because the way that I grew up was everything is focused on what's out there, right? And somehow living up to that, right? Or acquiring it, but not what resources are there in myself that I can be bringing forward to fully express who I am, to bring meaning and value to my own life, to bring purpose to my life, right? What is hope, right? Hope is the desire for something to happen, wanting something to happen, or a feeling of expectation. What inspires us to be hopeful, and what gets in the way? Have you ever been to a magic show? Yeah. Okay. And magic kind of can mess with your head, right? Because it makes the impossible appear possible. Right, yeah. So when when we feel like we're in an insurmountable situation, right? We're really struggling with something in life, or whether it's a condition, a circumstance, something happening within ourselves, it feels like a little magic could go a long way. Wouldn't it be great to be able to say, presto changeo, right? Does anybody remember the Bullwinkle cartoon? And how there would be those little skits in the middle, and Bullwinkle would be the magician, and he would wave his wand over the top hat, but something else would pop out than what he was expecting. All right, this is sometimes how I feel about magic. It's the double edge, but I appreciate it. So hope, coming back to hope, right? He had hope that something would happen, and it did, just not always what he expected. But the magic that we need in our lives sometimes is not so magical. It is something more powerful than magic, and that can be hope. So I don't know if you were all familiar with a field of psychology that has really emerged in the last few years. It's called positive psychology, which sounds really good, right? And proponents of this field have proposed that hope is one of the most important feeling states that you can have, which is interesting, right? We think about other qualities. We don't think about hope necessarily being that, but what research is finding is that individuals who have significant levels of hope are healthier, both physically and mentally and emotionally. They are less susceptible to disease. Okay? They perform better academically and athletically. Wow. If I had only known that being hopeful was going to help me do better in sports as a kid. A whole different way of thinking about things, right? So elite athletes score exceptionally high on psychological measures of hope that indicate that raw talent and grit and even optimism without hope is not sufficient. So you can be incredibly capable, but if you don't have hope, it doesn't work as well. I find this fascinating, right? Because what is the thing about this, right? Well, you may or may not be born with amazing reflexes, right? You may or may not be born with particular tendencies to skills, but hope is something we can all cultivate or even identify already in ourselves, right? Hope isn't something we have to find outside. Hope is already there. We're going to talk about a little bit more of that. So hope is also correlated with better relationships, higher self-esteem, all kinds of things. Hope, indeed, is a better predictor of success than intelligence or innate ability alone, says Margaret Naguib, who in The Power and Science of Hope. Hope is a better predictor of success. This is a really powerful idea, I think. But what kind of hope are we talking about? All right, we're going to get to that in a sec. So in our principles, you know I always like to talk about one of our principles. We say, we believe in our own soul, our own spirit, and our own destiny, for we understand that the life of all is God. And what that means, of course, is that God is right here, right? God is not out there. God is within us, because God is all that there is, which is, I think, another very revolutionary idea, and one with a great deal of power for us. So typically we think about hope as, you know, I hope you feel better. I hope your presentation goes well next week, right? I hope you have a good trip. And, you know, it's nice, it's positive, it's not super intense, right? And we also say, don't get your hopes up, right? Have you ever heard someone say that to you? Don't get your hopes up? Have you even ever said it to someone else, right? In a very well-meaning and loving way, because we don't like disappointment. So if we worry that if we hope too much, things might not work out. And that would be worse, to be disappointed, right, than to be hopeful. And I think, you know, Ernest Holmes kind of understood that use of the word hope. And in fact, in the Science of Mind textbook, he talks about hope as good, maybe better than despair, but mostly ineffective. He called it a subtle illusion. And I believe he meant that in the sense that I was just talking about. That quiet I hope, right? He distinguished hope from faith, right? So the kind of hope that we're going to talk about today, though, is a little different. It's more than just optimism, right? It's the idea that there is a core power that empowers our spiritual journey. And in that sense, I'm talking about hope as inspiration, right? So what is it that informs our hope? We get an idea, right? We get an inspiration. We get a desire to do something, feel something, experience something, be something. And that is where our hope comes from, that inspiration, that moment of desire. So when it's rooted in our connection with the divine, because we've been talking about how we are, in fact, the embodiments of the divine. So when we experience inspiration, that's the divine talking to us. That's the divine expressing itself. That's the divine kind of waving its hand and saying, hey, pay attention. Here's an idea. You know, something good can happen if you pay attention to this. And how often do we go, oh, that's never going to happen. That's too much, right? But the divine is talking to us, right? Because it's talking about possibility, right? That idea, right? That's the title of this talk. Anything is possible. I will tell you a brief story. When I first started my chaplaincy training, I was having lunch with Reverend Suzette one day, and we were talking about what was going on. I was doing this training at UCSD, and she asked me at one point, well, look, what do you want to do after you finish your training? What's your what's your thought about that? And I said, well, I want to get a job as a chaplain, and it would be great to work at UCSD. And I said it, I guess, in a tone where she looked at me like, well, why not? And I, well, it's probably not really going to happen. And I did that thing that we do, right? That thing to tamp down, right? Because, of course, that's what I really wanted. I so wanted that. But I was, I was afraid to name it because then I would be disappointed if it didn't happen. And this is the good thing. And so I share this story, to let you know that, yes, sadly, ministers are human beings and we forget our own teaching and truth periodically. And the really good thing is that we talk to people who remind us, as Reverend Suzette did in this case. And that's, of course, what we all, ministers and practitioners, are also here to do with you and for you, is to remind you, right? So in that moment, when she said to me, well, why not? I had to remember, oh yeah, why not? And it's really not, and in fact, that's what happened. I do work at UCSD. I'm a palliative care chaplain. And I share that partly because I think one of the things, and we sometimes say this, in treatment, right? We have an idea, we have a vision, we have an inspiration, we have a hope, and we say this or something greater. Because as human beings, we may not know, there could be even something more amazing, right? We don't want to limit our hope and our intention, but we also want to claim it. It's a little bit of a balancing act, isn't it? Yeah. So a really key part of all of this idea of hope, right, is both how we claim that initial inspiration, right, and then what we do with it after. Right? What do we do with it after? How do we claim our agency over our hope? And how do we navigate a pathway to activate that hope in the world, to bring forth what we are inspired to bring? And in that process, right, we're also called to build resilience, right? Because the reality is, of course, things don't always work out the way that we want. And the challenge and the opportunity that we have, the possibility, is to be able to recognize, well, I thought that's what I wanted, but then this other amazing thing happened. And am I noticing it? Because, if I was just focused on that one intention initially, I might not ever notice this other thing, right? Boy, it's complicated to be a human being, isn't it? Yeah. So, hope. Hope as inspiration, hope as agency to take action, and then to figure out how to do it. So we've already talked about how hope can galvanize us and lead to these amazing, better outcomes in life when we allow it to be an engaged and active part of our life. I think the next step with hope, right, is to lean into it. And Holmes talked about this as faith, right? So faith, unlike hope, is really something you lean into, right? He called it a practice, right? We lean into our practice of faith because it's the work, right? So hope is the impetus, faith is part of that pathway, part of that agency. We claim our agency through faith because we hold on to our vision, right? That's part of our faith. We express it, we act on it in the world, and we make choices, right? This is one of those famous cliches in our teaching, treat and move your feet, right? So that's the move your feet part of faith. You have to do. We don't just sit there waiting for something to happen. We don't just sit there hoping for something to happen. We have to do. And do can be a lot of different things. It can be practical in the world, and do can be spiritual mind treatment and prayer. Do can be visualization, visioning. Do can be many things. But we're required to do in order to realize that inspiration, that hope is. I think we have heard any number of stories in life about amazing circumstances where people faced really difficult challenges and overcame them in remarkable ways. And those stories are always really super inspirational and sometimes a little discouraging and like, man, how did that happen? Do I have, what it takes to accomplish that? But I am equally inspired, occasionally unsettled, with those. I mean, mostly inspired. And, I also question myself. What I'm grateful for in being in spiritual community with all of you is that this is how we support each other and reminding each other when we have those moments of uncertainty and insecurity that yes, actually, as expressions of God, we all have these potentials and powers. And it's really amazing if we take the time to pay attention and talk with each other and hear each other's stories, right? To be inspired by all the things that people are doing, right? And how they bring their hopes to the world. And we often tell stories about really big things. I read a story this week about the inventor of Braille, like the writing for blind people, how this young man, Louis Braille, invented it after he was himself blinded as a child in an accident. And he kind of amazingly developed this way for blind people to read by inventing an alphabet of raised dots on a page. In fact, evidently using the same type of tool that had accidentally blinded him. Really amazing story. And so we think of that's a huge action, right? An action that has changed the lives of millions. At the same time, what are the actions that can change lives in ways we don't know? One of my nieces posted something on Instagram this week. It was about how people, we read science fiction stories and movies all the time where someone goes back to the past and they change one little thing and everything changes in the future. And she said, well, why don't we think that little change that we might make right now could change everything in our future in a positive way? What a great question. And that, for me, was a reminder of the power of hope, right? That even a small action right now, that we could change things for the better, not only for us as individuals, but for us all. How wonderful is that, right? It's that butterfly effect. I think sometimes you've heard that metaphor also, right? That's already been kind of demonstrated scientifically that, the energy generated by a butterfly's wings can actually change the weather on the planet. Right? It's that same thing, small action. And how does hope generate that? Hope generates that by moving us into action, being the impetus. So not hope like, oh, I hope it goes well, but yeah, hope. I'm going. I'm going to challenge myself to move forward. In the chaplaincy work that I do, we talk about hope a lot, right? I work with people who are really ill. And so, of course, naturally people have hope for recovery, hope for cure. But other kinds of hope also come up. Sometimes we talk about this in certain language. So we talk about conditional hope, right? That's a hope with a very specific outcome. And we talk about unconditional hope. That's a more general hope, a metaphor sometimes people use as sort of imagining hope as a stream, and conditional hope is like a little iceberg in the stream. It's kind of gelled around something. But more free-flowing hope is informing all parts of people's lives, right? And what happens when you allow your hope to flow? Surprising things. I will tell you that I've heard people talk about reviving dreams that they had forgotten that they even had. Kind of the challenge of illness sometimes is that it makes you have to think about, okay, right? We all know we're going to die, right? But for most of us, that's like somewhere over there. And when you're faced with a serious illness, you're faced with your mortality and the fact that you might have less time than you imagined that you were going to have. And so now, okay, what do I do with that? Where does my hope go? What do I lean into? What do I feel inspired to do? And in that free-flowing form of hope, that unconditional hope, there can be really magical things that happen for individuals. returns to things that they had given up doing because they didn't imagine it was possible. But now there's nothing to lose, right? And the truth is, there is always nothing to lose at a certain level. But, you know, it's natural for us to be worried about that. So we talk about these spiritual practices all the time. So I'm not going to go too far into them. We affirm the value of these practices for claiming your hope and for acting on your hope. And it sounds kind of obvious, but they can be really powerful. So I just want to remind you that these are all things that you can do individually, but also together. You can do them together here, right? You can do them together in our larger CSL community. Visioning, right? Visioning is one of those practices that helps you claim your hope, identify your hope, right? You open yourself to what does the divine want to express through you, and then, right, what's getting in the way? It's a process that helps you identify those things that might be impeding the expression of your hope and your intention and your faith. We talk about affirmations, right? Those positive statements that put us in the mindset to actually lean into what our hope is and to bring it into our action through faith. Visualization, seeing it in your mind, right? And spiritual mind treatment. And I don't have to tell you about that because you all know what it is, but it's our form of affirmative prayer that we practice at Centers for Spiritual Living, and that any practitioner or minister can support you in practicing. You don't need us to do it. You can do it, but we can support you in doing that. Right? I want to just briefly address kind of how we think about things when they don't work, right? Because that's hard when we have really dedicated ourselves to a hope and it doesn't work out. And I bring this up because I observe this a lot in the context of illness and healing, right? What does it mean when we have invested ourselves so deeply into healing and the healing that we're looking for doesn't happen the way that we want it to happen? That can be really, really painful. Painful for the person, painful for the people who love that person, painful for everybody around them. And I don't have a magic answer to this. I am just going to share a couple of things that have been meaningful to me in thinking about it. One is simply that I believe there is, to some degree, a mystery about our life experience, right? One of the things I love about religious science as a teaching is that it's very principle focused. It's very focused on how we use those principles in a constructive way. But we're human beings. And though we are channels for the divine, we are not the totality of God, right? If we think about sometimes the metaphor people use is, you know, the God is the ocean, we're all the little drops. So we partake of the divine in our little drop beings, but we don't have the full scope of that divine knowledge. So if it doesn't work out the way that we focus on, the way we intend, the way we hope for, does it mean it doesn't work? Well, everybody has to make their own judgment about that. But I will say this. I heard a story once about a minister who had a very serious neurological disease, ALS, which in human terms does not have a cure. It's a progressive disease. People lose control of their bodies. Eventually, they die. And there were many people praying for the recovery and healing of this person. And the illness progressed and continued. And there was a lot of dismay about this. And the minister said, well, you know, I feel healed. I feel at one with God. I feel perfectly healed. This person was not concerned about what was happening with their body. They were concerned about healing at a deeper, more fundamental level. And I am not suggesting in any way that focusing on healing of the body is not correct or appropriate, because we absolutely affirm that in our teaching. It's not a but, it's an and, right? There's a woman who wrote a book about grief. Her name is Megan Devine. It's called It's Okay That You're Not Okay. She said, if we change our orientation to hope, moving from what we might get to how we might get there, then hope is a concept that I can get behind. We might not hope for a specific physical outcome, but instead hope to live this experience of loss in a way that is beautiful and personally meaningful. Okay? So I just leave you with that as something to think about. This is a subject, right, that we're all collectively engaged in thinking about. Today is not the last word by any means about any of it. That's part of the ongoing conversation. So, your call to action. I invite you this week to identify something that you are inspired to hope for. To use some of the tools that we talked about to deepen what that vision is, what that idea is for you, and then to think about some tools you can use to help you lean into the faith of bringing that forward through you, not outside of you, but through you into your experience. Okay, bless you. You know, in our teaching, there has sometimes been a belief that unrealized hope reflects a failure to believe profoundly enough to most effectively apply the law. And I share this because when I was first starting my ministerial training, I was speaking with a friend and their spouse, and it turned out the spouse had been raised in religious science. I didn't know that. And she could not understand why I was doing this, because when she was growing up, whenever something didn't work out in her life, her parents would say, "What's the error of your thought?" And she had trauma. She still had lifelong trauma from this experience. And so I want to be really clear in saying, when things don't work out, the invitation is to think about what's getting in the way, right, maybe, but not what's wrong with you, right, for doing that. So I just wanted to affirm that, because, of course, the irony for me coming to our teaching much later in life was that it was so liberating, but here for this person, it was such a prison. So, you know.
Good clarification.
So, with this week's call to action, I just invite you to remember that you are never alone in this process, right? You are co-creating with the divine. And you have the support of everyone here in the sanctuary, everyone in our community, to accomplish whatever you hope for and whatever that hope leads you to be and do. I think together as a community that is dedicated to spiritual growth and collective well-being, we can embody hope as a transformative force together and support each other in cultivating hope and strengthening our compassion and our unity. So I want to close today by just inviting you to join me in an affirmation. So please stand. Okay, you ready? We're going to say it softly, affirmatively, and really affirmatively. Okay. Today, I know anything is possible. Today, I know anything is possible. Today, I know anything is possible. Namaste. Thank you.